Kim Momi, ridiculed by day as an ugly woman, transforms into the masked queen at night, driving all men wild with her allure. Beneath her glamorous mask lies a shattered heart, which eventually triggers a series of absurd and tragic events. From a young age, Momi loves singing and dancing, dreaming of one day becoming a star on the stage. She craves the applause and cheers, but her appearance is far from the glamorous image of a star, so much so that even her own mother scorns her for her ugliness. As she grows older, her ordinary face takes her further from her dreams. At 27, Momi gives up her impractical dreams and becomes an ordinary staff. However, whenever she sees those dazzling stars on TV, her heart still fills with longing. To compensate for this regret, Momi chooses another way to fulfill her dreams. She hides her true face behind exquisite masks and wigs, and with her outstanding dance moves and enchanting figure, she becomes a popular singing and dancing live streamer. Although by day she remains an unremarkable office staff, by night she is the most dazzling mask queen. This double life continues for 2 years, and Momi could never have anticipated that the events about to unfold would completely change the course of her life. Momi has a good friend at work, and the two are often mocked by their male colleagues for their looks. They regularly vent in private about these pretentious male co-workers and also gossip about Ariam, a colleague popular for her beauty. However, her boss, Mr. Park, is an exception. Unlike the others, he never falls for Ariam's charms. Instead, he scolds her, reminding her that her purpose at the company is to work, not to serve tea to her colleagues. Mr. Park's integrity and competence make Momi develop feelings for him, but she knows they are unrequited as he is already married. But what she doesn't know is, even though he is married, he still enjoys flaunting his fake muscles online. Momi's colleagues warn her that Mr. Park is not a good person, but she can't help being drawn to him. One evening, at a company dinner, Mr. Park rejects Ariam's offer to pour him a drink, causing dissatisfaction among some colleagues and even a dispute with a superior. The topic of the popular online mask girl comes up, and Momi almost reveals her own secret identity. Her colleagues criticize these vulgar live streams, but for Momi, they are the only source of self-confidence in her life. As the dinner ends and Mr. Park leaves early due to his wife's illness, Momi finds an excuse to take a ride with him, giving her a chance to be alone with him. However, on their way home, Mr. Park receives a call from his wife. Despite being with Momi, he lies and says he's alone, puzzling Momi since carpooling is not something awkward to explain. Why would he lie to his wife? Momi ponders this for a long time and finally concludes that he must like her. That night, she shares this thought with her livestream audience. Many on the forum advise her not to overthink it, suggesting that it's just a man's excuse to avoid explanations, but she doesn't believe them and blocks those who disagree. She is convinced that Mr. Park has feelings for her and refuses to listen to anyone else's advice until her loyal followers oppose this idea, prompting her to drop the topic. However, reality strikes swiftly. One day, Mr. Park loses his temper at Ariam, and while everyone is curious about what's happening, Momi believes that he is a man who keeps his personal and professional lives separate. At the end of the day, she sees Ariam staying late to work overtime and comforts her not to dwell on the day's events, unaware of her own misconceptions. Elated, Momi leaves the office, forgetting her transit card, and on her way back to retrieve it, she encounters Mr. Park returning to the office, sparking suspicion. Sure enough, when she returns, she witnesses a heartbreaking scene of Mr. Park and Ariam embracing intimately. This reality shatters her fantasies, making her infatuation seem foolish. She returns home and drinks herself into a stupor, trying to numb her pain with alcohol. In a half-drunk state, she remembers the identity that could comfort her. She puts on her mask and dances in front of the camera, twisting her body with the rhythm of the music as if to shake off all the shame. In a moment of impulsiveness, she tears off her clothes. This shocks all her viewers, and the mask girl's live stream is consequently banned. When sober, Momi is full of regret, wishing she could find a hole to hide. Momi blames everything on Ariam. In her anger, she spreads rumors among her colleagues that Ariam is having an affair with Mr. Park. She initially intends only to teach Ariam a lesson, but the rumor spirals out of control, eventually claiming that Mr. Park has 2 families and that Ariam has borne him a child. Momi had not anticipated the situation escalating so severely, nor had she expected Mr. Park to lose his job and Ariam to be transferred out of the company. Although she gets what she wants, Momi feels no joy, only a heavy heart. At this time, Ju Onam from her company approaches her, seemingly with something to say, but ultimately walks away without saying a word. That evening, Momi encounters a drunken Mr. Park on the street. Seeing him in such a sorry state, she can't help but care for him. Mr. Park, intoxicated, begins to rant on the street, and Momi quickly hails a taxi to take him home. However, as soon as they get into the car, Mr. Park passes out on her lap, prompting complex thoughts in her mind. Not knowing Mr. Park's home address, and as it begins to rain, Momi feels it is fate and decides to take him to a motel. At the motel, Momi initially plans to leave, but suddenly feels an infatuation for Mr. Park, thinking she can't just leave him with his clothes all wet. Unexpectedly, Mr. Park suddenly hugs her. Even though she knows he is drunk, Momi can't resist her fantasies and ends up having a relationship with him. Momi thinks this will win Mr. Park's heart, but when he wakes up in the morning, he is terrified and runs away. The next day, Momi receives an anonymous email. Within is her picture from that night. Momi panics and hides in the bathroom, fearing that if her live streaming accident is known by other colleagues, she will be completely ruined. On her way home, she feels as if everyone could be the one who sent the email, filling her with dread. By chance, she encounters a pervert on the subway who gropes her. The offender vehemently denies it, so Momi drags him to the police station. There, the man insults her further by saying, "Look at yourself, I must be crazy to touch you." This humiliation causes Momi to break down even more. The situation escalates into a fight, which ultimately leads to no resolution. That night, she also receives a text from Mr. Park, who claims he remembers nothing from that night, implying that it should be considered as if nothing happened. This message sends Momi's emotions plummeting even further. Heartbroken, Momi initiates a private chat with the top fan of her livestream for comfort, not knowing that this person is her colleague, Ju Onam. Ju Onam's story has similarities with Momi's. Both are mocked for their appearances and feel marginalized in the workplace. Short and overweight, Ju Onam has been bullied by classmates since childhood, learning over time to hide his presence to avoid bullying. As he grows older, he becomes a man obsessed with anime and adult films, finding solace in these interests rather than in real-life relationships. He has a girlfriend, though not a real person. To get rid of his controlling mother, who often pressures him to find a real partner to provide grandchildren, Onam lives alone in a studio apartment. Real-life interactions with women are so challenging for him that he prefers to look at their hands to avoid the awkwardness of eye contact. In real life, Ju Onam might be an unnoticed otaku, but in the world of live streaming, he transforms into a generous and dashing top fan. He regards the beautiful women in the live streams as his goddesses, especially the mask girl, whose face he can't see, but whose responses always satisfy him the most. However, one evening, he shockingly discovers that the mask girl is none other than his colleague, Jin Momi, identified by the color and style of her nails. From that moment on, Momi holds a completely different place in his heart. Although her looks are ordinary, every time he sees her, he thinks of the charming woman from the live stream, and he alone knows the true face behind the mask. Since then, he eagerly awaits the mask girl's live streams every night, becoming her faithful supporter under the alias Leonardo. Whenever someone mocks Momi's appearance, he is always the first to defend her. In Ju Onam's imagination, he is Momi's protector, believing that one day she will realize his presence. Although Momi knows nothing about him, he never misses any of her live streaming. They spend many nights together through the streams, and his obsession with her deepens. Everything changes one evening during a company dinner when he discovers Momi has fallen for the married Mr. Park and is seeking relationship advice during her live stream. Seeing the advice comments being deleted one by one, he realizes Momi is deeply infatuated. Ju Onam is devastated and decides to confess his feelings to Momi. He waits for her near the company after work, but unexpectedly sees Mr. Park and Momi return to the office around the same time, giving him a bad feeling. However, when he reaches the office, he finds out that Mr. Park's actual affair is with Ariam, which elates him. On his way home, he can't help but feel secretly excited, thinking that since Mr. Park is unfaithful, he might have a chance with Momi. However, he didn't anticipate how heartbroken Momi would be, leading her to lose control during a drunken live stream, causing chaos. In his anger, Ju Onam resolves to boldly confess his love to Momi, urging her to abandon the married scoundrel and embrace him instead. He firmly believes that by expressing his love, Momi will feel his love and fall into his arms, leading them to a happy life together. However, this is merely his fantasy. In reality, he can't even utter a complete sentence in front of Momi, let alone confess his feelings. Ju Oh-nam knows Momi hasn't let go of her feelings for Mr. Park. That night, he sees them get into a taxi together, and he follows them. He watches as they enter a motel together. Despite his actions resembling those of a stalker, and Momi being completely unaware of his presence, he feels betrayed. In his anger, he sends Momi a threatening email, warning her that he will expose her identity. However, after his attempt at revenge, he feels an overwhelming emptiness. Just then, the masked girl suddenly contacts him through a private chat. A moment ago full of rage, Ju Oh-nam instantly becomes warm and accommodating. Unexpectedly, the masked girl tells him she plans to quit live streaming because she believes her appearance means she will never find love. She also asks if Ju Oh-nam can meet her, expressing fear that she might do something foolish alone. This request throws Ju Oh-nam into a quandary. He is afraid to reveal his true self and can only try to comfort her. In the few seconds he hesitates, Momi is invited out by a live stream fan named Handsome Monk. The story shifts back to Momi, who begins to regret agreeing to meet a fan, thinking she must be crazy. But then, Handsome Monk arrives and recognizes her. During their meal, he continuously expresses how fascinated he is by her live streams and expresses a desire to see her real face. When Momi hesitates to remove her mask, he starts to press her, and to stop him, she has to reveal her disguise. Seeing his shocked expression, Momi thinks she has scared him, but to her surprise, he asks why she covers her face. Although Momi is not a traditional beauty, he finds her face natural and authentic, and this unexpected praise surprises her. Afterward, they go to a bar where Handsome Monk, who has studied abroad, encourages Momi not to feel inferior because of her looks. He also mentions that if she went to the US, she would be popular because American men appreciate women with single eyelids and high cheekbones. When he learns that Momi had considered plastic surgery, he strongly advises against it. Momi, who has never been praised like this, feels a newfound confidence from Handsome Monk's words. Upon returning from the restroom, Momi notices Handsome Monk busy with messaging someone, but she doesn't think much and continues their conversation. Little does she know, the seemingly gentlemanly man is live streaming their date to his fan page, mocking Momi's looks as monstrous and plotting to take advantage of her. Seeing these messages, Ju Oh-nam is furious. He immediately calls Momi, but she is too engaged in conversation to notice. Frustrated and worried, Ju Oh-nam bolts out of his home. Meanwhile, Handsome Monk suggests they move to a quieter place to continue talking. In high spirits, Momi agrees without a second thought, only to find out that the quiet place he mentions is a motel. Since there are no hourly rooms available, the man grudgingly books a room for the entire night. When he goes out to buy beer, he passes Ju Oh-nam arriving at the scene. Inside the room, Momi becomes increasingly uneasy and discovers Ju Oh-nam's missed call, adding to her confusion just as Handsome Monk returns with the beer. By then, Momi has sobered up completely and feels that the situation is inappropriate, deciding to leave. However, Handsome Monk insists she stay to talk and abruptly kisses her, frightening Momi, who pushes him away. When he tries to force himself on her, Momi struggles to get free, but he suddenly turns vicious, hurling vile insults at her. After hearing his cuss words, an outraged Momi slaps the table with the room fee, but he escalates the situation, leading her to strike him with her handbag. Enraged, Handsome Monk throws Momi onto the bed, attempting to assault her. In a desperate defense, Momi kicks him in a sensitive area, and a scuffle ensues. During the struggle, Handsome Monk lunges at Momi, and they both fall off the bed, causing severe consequences. As Momi got up, she saw Handsome Monk bleeding from the back of his head after hitting it during the fall. Panicking, her first thought is to call an ambulance, but at that moment, she receives a text from Ju Oh-nam warning her about Handsome Monk's intentions. Ju Oh-nam's call comes through, and Momi asks him to come to the hotel to discuss whether she should call the police. Ju Oh-nam advises not, explaining that although it is self-defense, their joint presence at the motel might be perceived as excessive defense, potentially leading to a legal battle and imprisonment. After some deliberation, Ju Oh-nam convinces Momi to leave the scene and assures her that he will handle the situation. Despite her instincts telling her otherwise, Momi leaves under Ju Oh-nam's persuasive urging, leaving the aftermath in his hands. Shortly after, Ju Oh-nam prepares a large suitcase and some tools, planning to dispose of the corpse. However, during the process, the man unexpectedly wakes up. Without hesitation, Ju Oh-nam immediately ends his life, frantically stabs him multiple times. This ordeal makes Momi unable to bear her face any longer, plunging into endless darkness. After disposing of the corpse, Ju Oh-nam returns to work as usual. but Momi suddenly resigns, quitting over the phone instead of in person. In order to find Momi, Ju-oh-nam lies about having a personal item to send to her and obtains her home address from the HR. However, Momi has completely lost contact, not answering calls and absent from her home. When Ju-oh-nam is about to give up, the masked girl starts a live stream again, announcing it will be her last one. Desperate, Ju-oh-nam finally locates Momi, who opens the door amidst his frantic shouts. Ju-oh-nam finds Momi has packed her bags ready to leave. Unable to pretend everything is normal at work any longer, Ju-oh-nam tries to convince Momi to forget the incident, asserting that the bastard deserved to die, but Momi has already recognized him as Leonardo from the livestream and knows he is the one who sent the threatening email. Ju-oh-nam explains that he acted out of anger over Mr. Park's affair, claiming it was just his overwhelming love for Momi that made him lash out. But to his surprise, Momi laughs at his words. It seems like Momi has come to a realization, agreeing that she should forget the incident and start over. However, Ju-oh-nam becomes fearful and asks if she also has to eliminate himself. Momi approaches Ju-oh-nam step by step, asking him what he wants her to do, then exposes his pretended deep affection. Ju-oh-nam reacts violently, pinning Momi down on the bed. Momi initially resists but soon calms down. Thinking he has consent, Ju-oh-nam begins to take off his pants while professing his ridiculous love. It is then that he sees clearly Momi's eyes have changed, and beneath the mask, her eyes are full of scars. Momi suddenly rips off the mask, revealing a face wrapped in bandages. Before Ju-oh-nam can react, Momi flips him over, pinning him down, and, at his most vulnerable moment, takes his life. After Ju-oh-nam is killed by Momi, the story takes a darker turn, beginning with a woman named Kyung-ja, who is Ju-oh-nam's mother. Born into a poor family, Kyung-ja knows nothing of love and marries an ordinary man arranged by her parents. But her husband leaves her soon after their marriage for another love. To support her son Ju-oh-nam, Kyung-ja has to take on various jobs, from cleaning to delivery work, and finally driving a taxi. Eventually, she saves enough money to open a small restaurant. As her life improves, she becomes exceptionally resilient. However, raising her child proves much more challenging than maintaining a livelihood. From a young age, Ju-oh-nam is bullied by classmates for his unattractive appearance. Kyung-ja notices that her son's new stationery often goes missing, and sometimes he comes home with injuries. Each time, her son claims it is an accident. She lacks the patience to understand what her son is going through, simply praying that he will grow up to be a good student with both moral and academic excellence. Perhaps her prayers are answered, as her son never causes her worry academically. Unbeknownst to her, Ju-oh-nam develops an early fascination with adult comics due to his repressed childhood. Kyung-ja places all her life's hopes on her son, not realizing that her suffocating love is pushing him further away. Ju-oh-nam does not fulfill her dream of him attending medical school, but he does manage to get into a decent university. While others might see Ju-oh-nam as an inconspicuous homebody, in Kyung-ja's eyes, her son is the most handsome and talented young man. However, she doesn't expect that after finding a job, his first action will be to move out. She is furious, but it does nothing to stop her son's departure. After Ju-oh-nam moves out, the relationship between mother and son becomes extremely distant. He neither shares the home security code with Kyung-ja, nor does he call her often, which greatly upsets her. She can't understand why the child she raised single-handedly has become so cold. Despite this, she still believes that one day Ju-oh-nam will return to being the obedient son he once was. Little does she know, one day her son will just disappear. After Ju-oh-nam hasn't been in touch for a long time, Kyung-ja, accompanied by the police, goes to his apartment. Upon entering, they are met with a pungent stench and find the apartment in utter disarray, with strange dolls placed on the bed. The police discover a suitcase in a cupboard, containing dismembered body parts. Confronted with this scene, Kyung-ja faints on the spot. The police conduct an investigation of the bodies found in the apartment, and the case is reported in the news. Kyung-ja is hospitalized due to extreme distress. When she learns that the body isn't Ju-oh-nam's, she breathes a sigh of relief. However, she soon finds out that her son is considered a suspect by the police, which makes her angrily proclaim her belief that her son could not be a murderer. The police continue their investigation into Ju-oh-nam, discovering through descriptions by his colleagues that he rarely socializes with others at work, except with Momi, who has already resigned. Momi's apartment is found empty, and the landlord knows little about her. only recalling that she returned one day with bandages, seemingly having undergone cosmetic surgery. The police speculate that Ju Oh-nam might have fled with Momi. Local media follow up on the story, sending reporters to Momi's hometown in an attempt to interview her mother, but are met with refusal. Over 2,000 illegal adult videos are found on Ju Oh-nam's computer. With a large collection of adult paraphernalia at home, experts analyze that he might suffer from a sexual perception disorder, possibly expressing his desires in distorted ways. Kyung-ja, in an attempt to find her son, contacts the media, but she does not expect them to portray Ju Oh-nam as a psychopath and murderer. She is furious, believing her son to be the kindest, most loving child, and decides to no longer rely on anyone else but to personally search for her son's whereabouts. Knowing nothing about Ju Oh-nam's life, Kyung-ja hires someone to hack into his computer. However, after unlocking it, she realizes she doesn't know how to use it. Understanding that she needs to familiarize herself with his lifestyle to find him, she signs up for a computer class to learn how to use the internet from scratch. After mastering the internet, her first action is to search for information about the mask girl and then find a popular post in a fan forum that reveals her real identity. Momi's photo is thus exposed, but Kyung-ja is unfamiliar with the internet slang used by the young people on the forum. She has no choice but to learn these terms one by one. Soon after, she closes her restaurant and embarks on a journey to find her son. Over the years, she has saved some money through her hard work, which she withdraws in full to devote all her time and energy to finding her son. After some time, she becomes proficient in using the internet and builds a good relationship with Bear, the administrator of the Mask Girl fan site, with whom she collaborates to track down the Mask Girl. One day, Bear sends her a link, suggesting he might have found the Mask Girl. He discovers a video of a supermarket promotion, featuring a woman dancing with a golden wig. The woman's dance moves and physique are very similar to those of the Mask Girl, leading Bear to suspect she is the Mask Girl after cosmetic surgery. He calls the police to report, but the police think it is a prank and ignore his call. Moreover, there are inconsistencies since Kyung-ja notices that the woman's chest has undergone surgery, whereas the Mask Girl's figure is natural. This leaves Kyung-ja very confused. That night, Kyung-ja has a nightmare in which her son is brutally murdered, a terrifying premonition of what is soon to unfold. Shortly afterward, she receives a call from the police informing her that Ju Oh-nam's body has been found. The sight of her son's tragic death leaves Kyung-ja devastated. The news of Ju Oh-nam's murder quickly makes headlines, and the long-missing Mask Girl becomes the prime suspect in the case. From that day, Kyung-ja's sole purpose becomes finding this woman to avenge her son's death. She travels to Momi's hometown, loudly demanding that the daughter be handed over at the doorstep. However, the household staff tell her that the lady has severed ties with her daughter long ago, and Momi's mother refuses to see her, watching coldly as Kyung-ja breaks down in tears. Subsequently, Kyung-ja is taken to the police station for disturbing public order. In the days that follow, she finds no clues about the Mask Girl. Until one day, during a casual conversation with church members, she learns of a local witch reputed to be very effective at revealing extramarital affairs, who has almost never failed. Despite her doubts, Kyung-ja decides to give it a try. Surprisingly, after some mysterious ritual, the witch does give her a location, which turns out to be the same place where the supermarket girl was seen dancing. This reignites Kyung-ja's hope. She quickly locates the supermarket and asks people around. Pretending that the dancer is her runaway daughter, she manages to obtain the contact information for an agency. She immediately rushes to the agency. The agency owner tells her that the supermarket girl has resigned to seek a higher-paying job from a nightclub. That evening, Kyung-ja goes to the downtown bar district, running through every bar and nightclub, but to no avail. Exhausted, she finally encounters the girl at a roadside stall. She can hardly believe her eyes. After repeatedly confirming it is indeed, she immediately follows the woman, eventually arriving at a nightclub. Kyung-ja initially intends to enter the nightclub to confirm the identity of the woman, but is stopped by a waiter and cannot get in. Moreover, she learns that Momi has adopted a new name there, Chun-ai, which confuses her, so she returns to her car to continue surveillance. Overwhelmed by exhaustion, she falls asleep and experiences another nightmare. In her dream, Ju Oh-nam is cruelly murdered by the Mask Girl, and her son, unable to rest in peace, filled with resentment, attempts to strangle her. Waking up in tears, she sees the woman leaving work, which invigorates her, and she begins to follow her. She tracks the woman to her home and discovers that she seems to be living with a man. Kyungja watches the woman's house throughout the night and follows her again when she leaves the next day. She tracks the woman to a hair salon and then pretends to be a customer to get closer. Unsure how to confirm the woman's identity, she notices a necklace around her neck that looks familiar, thinking she has seen it somewhere before. She looks through her son's documents and finally confirmed that this necklace is identical to the one worn by the mask girl. At that moment, Bear sends her a message. He has also arrived because he heard that the supermarket girl's mother is looking for her. But he does not know that this mother is Kyungja. Having confirmed the woman's identity, Kyungja starts her revenge plan. She first illegally purchases a gun and then applies to become a taxi driver. Afterward, she waits outside the nightclub every night, waiting for the woman to appear. Finally, one evening, she successfully picks up the woman. To gain her trust, she first pretends to be a kind auntie, engaging in conversation, and then claims she dropped her phone in the back seat. When the woman bends down to pick up the phone, Kyungja uses a stun gun to knock her out. When the woman awakes, she finds herself tied up in a desolate place, her cries for help in vain. The woman does not understand why the auntie is treating her this way. Kyungja grabs her hair, determined to teach her a lesson. After venting, she shows a photo of Ju Oh-nam, but strangely, the woman claims she does not recognize the man in the picture. Moreover, her real name is not Jin Momi, but Kim Chun-ai. Kyungja does not believe her and thinks she is lying. To prove her suspicion, she puts a mask on the woman. With the mask on, she becomes even more convinced that the woman before her is the mask girl. She raises the gun at her, but the woman continues to deny it, prompting Kyungja to mention the necklace. Unexpectedly, the woman bursts into laughter upon seeing the necklace. Confused, Kyungja rips off the mask and asks her what she is laughing about. The woman then explains that she knows who Kyungja is looking for, and to prove she isn't Jin Momi, she tells her own story. The woman, named Kim Chun-ae, has been an ordinary-looking and marginalized person in her class. In high school, she falls for Bu Yang, the class heartthrob, who many female classmates consider their prince charming. Kim Chun-ae never thinks she would have anything to do with Bu Yang until she bumps into him while working at a convenience store after graduation. To her surprise, Bu Yang not only recognizes her but also calls her by her name. Because Bu Yang is not yet of legal drinking age, he asks Kim Chun-ae to buy him alcohol. Unable to resist Bu Yang's charm, she becomes his follower, though she is still happy just to talk to him. Not long after, Bu Yang organizes a birthday party and specifically sends someone to pick up Chun-ae to attend. Arriving at the KTV, the private room is packed with people. Chun-ae has never been to such a party and is extremely nervous, but Bu Yang's attentiveness makes her heart race. Chun-ae has fantasized about being with Bu Yang, but looking at herself in the mirror, she can't believe such good fortune would happen to her. However, as she is preparing to go home, Bu Yang waits for her in the hallway, takes her hand, and says earnestly that he has something important to tell her. Chun-ae's heart nearly leaps out of her chest, thinking he is about to confess his feelings, but he only wants to borrow money, $2,000, promising to return it in a week. Chun-ae agrees without a second thought, but the money is never returned. Afterwards, Bu Yang continues to borrow money from her intermittently. She never presses him for repayment, instead working even harder. One day, Chun-ae sees Bu Yang's debut stage on television, realizing he has achieved his dream of becoming a star. She texts him congratulations, but Bu Yang does not reply. Like other fans, she waits outside his apartment complex, hoping to see him, but Bu Yang seems not to notice her and walks straight past. Chun-ae stays until dark, then sneaks into the complex while a neighbor is taking out the trash and hangs a gift on Bu Yang's door. Hearing movement inside, she quickly hides. She overhears Bu Yang telling his teammates that he intentionally ignores her, describing Chun-ae as his ATM, whom he goes to whenever he needs money, and that he has several such ATMs. Hearing these ruthless words, Chun-ae breaks down and then posts Bu Yang's dark past online in revenge, resulting in his dismissal from the company and the ruin of his career. Subsequently, unable to accept her ordinary looks, Chun-ae saves money for plastic surgery. Years later, Chun-ae and Bu Yang reunite. The once idolized man has become unemployed. Knowing she shouldn't make the same mistake, she still can't control her infatuation, and she is pleased to see Bu Yang's gaze on her has changed. Eventually, they get together. Even though Bu Yang is jobless and has only a broken car, Chun-ae suggests they move in together, and Bu Yang promises to try to find a job. To support their living expenses, Chunai quits her job to sing and dance at a nightclub, quickly becoming the top performer. However, Boo-young fails to keep his promise, spending his days playing video games at home, not doing any housework, and not even feeding the dog, which increasingly frustrates Chunai. Growing impatient, Kyung-ja directly asks, "Where is Momi?" Chunai's ramblings are getting on her nerves. Under Kyung-ja's prompting, Chunai finally brings up Jin Momi. Chunai has met her while working at the nightclub and knows immediately that Jin Momi will become her rival. Even though Jin Momi has no ID and does not reveal her real name, the boss decides to hire her. Sure enough, it isn't long before Jin Momi begins overshadowing Chunai, and their relationship becomes fiercely competitive. Chunai even discovers that Jin Momi is stealing her clients. Enraged, she confronts Jin Momi that night, leading to a fight. The boss, upon discovering this, does not side with Chunai because, as a boss, she only cares about performance. Chunai leaves the nightclub, but not before accidentally picking up Jin Momi's necklace, causing a series of misunderstandings. Kyung-ja listens to Chunai's story, unsure whether to believe her. Chunai admits to having breast augmentation, whereas Jin Momi is natural. After poking around a bit, Kyung-ja still can't tell the difference, and only threatens Chunai with consequences if she lies to her. Seizing the opportunity, Chunai offers to help Kyung-ja find Jin Momi. Early the next day, she returns to the previous nightclub to inquire about Jin Momi's whereabouts. Unfortunately, Jin Momi has also quit after Chunai left. Chunai suspects that Jin Momi might have gone to another nightclub and suggests that Kyung-ja hire her to investigate since she has the connections and sources. If Kyung-ja goes around asking, Jin Momi might find out and flee. Although Kyung-ja doesn't fully trust Chunai, she has to admit her analysis makes sense, so she agrees to cooperate. After Kyung-ja left, Chunai hurries to a rundown examination hall. It turns out that all the competitive conflicts were totally fabricated. She and Jin Momi did indeed know each other from the nightclub, but they never had any issues. Instead, they clicked immediately due to similar experiences and became partners on stage. Both wanted to become beautiful, had been hurt, and sought rebirth. For a time, they were as close as twins. Jin Momi even gave Chunai the necklace just because Chunai said it was beautiful. Until one day, Jin Momi suddenly resigned, and when Chunai went to visit her, she found her severely ill. Seeing her with a persistent high fever, Chunai urged her to go to the hospital, but Jin Momi stubbornly refused. Momi confided in Chunai that she had killed someone, leaving Chunai utterly shocked. After hearing Momi's story, Chunai felt deep sympathy, shedding tears of compassion and embracing Momi tightly, swearing to protect her. For Chunai, protecting Momi was like protecting herself, so she lied to Kyung-ja and reminded her colleagues not to disclose Momi's information. Knowing Kyung-ja was after revenge, she urged Momi to escape quickly, but Momi had nowhere to go, having been estranged from her family since her youth due to her mother's disdain. When Chunai left the examination center, she did not expect that this scene was captured by Bear, the administrator of the Mask Girl fan site. That evening, Chunai returned home to find her boyfriend, Boo-young, still playing games on the computer, didn't care her disappearance for a day. Chunai's long-suppressed anger erupted, and she decided to break up with Boo-young and asked him to move out immediately. However, Boo-young's reaction was indifferent. He even planned to stay in the house and not leave. Chunai decided to call the police, but Boo-young was not alarmed, as he had discovered that Chunai was the one who had exposed his dark secrets online. Boo-young found her username on Chunai's computer and began to physically attack her, furious that Chunai had ruined his future, determined to drain her of all her value. Meanwhile, Momi went out to buy medicine but encountered Bear on her way back. Bear, through tracking Chunai, found Momi and recognized her as the Mask Girl. Momi denied it while feeling nauseous and ran into an alley to vomit for a while. Facing Bear's persistence, Momi warned him not to follow her anymore and quickly packed her bags to prepare to flee. However, as soon as she stepped out, she encountered Chunai, who was bruised all over. Chunai begged Momi to take her along, so the two went back home, planning to escape together. When Chunai returned, Boo-young was asleep. She quickly packed some valuable items, planning to leave with her dog. Unexpectedly, Boo-young had awakened, and seeing Chunai trying to flee, grabbed her hair and dragged her back. Chunai's dog, trying to protect its owner, was kicked away by Boo-young. Enraged, Chunai decided to fight Boo-young, but she was quickly overpowered and nearly beaten to death. At a critical moment, Momi appeared and furiously attacked Boo-young. However, the disparity in strength meant that Momi was also knocked down by Boo-young. Momi picked up a vase from the ground and smashed it on Buyong again, and while he was caught off guard, she strangled him with a rope. Although Buyong was strong, the combined effort of the two women ultimately led to his death. Kyung-ja jolts awake from her deep slumber in the internet cafe, her heart sinking as she realizes that Chunai has not contacted her at all. Suddenly, her phone pings with a private message from Bear, attached with a photo of Chunai and Momi. It dawns on Kyung-ja that she has been duped by Chunai, and she immediately resolves to seek revenge. Momi and Chunai work together to heave Buyong's corpse into the trunk of their car, plotting to dispose of it and flee the scene. Meanwhile, Kyung-ja catches wind of their whereabouts. On the road, Chunai's mind is a blank slate about the future, unsure of where to go. Momi also lacks a plan, but her eyes shimmer with determination. She discovers she is pregnant, and despite the father being Ju-oh Nam, Momi decides to keep the baby. Chunai thinks she is insane. How could she possibly raise a child in such circumstances? Momi's bigger concern, however, is the child's potential unattractiveness. Chunai reassures her they can save up for cosmetic surgery when the child grows up, but Momi insists that even if her child is unattractive, she will always praise her beauty because her own mother never did. As they hold hands, Chunni feels at least she isn't alone. Yet on the highway, Kyung-ja's eyes blaze with the flames of vengeance, drawing ever closer. Momi and Chunai pull over by a lakeside, intending to handle Buyong's corpse, when Kyung-ja emerges, shotgun in hand. Frozen in place, Kyung-ja demands to know if they have conspired to kill Ju-oh Nam. To protect Momi, Chunai confesses to being the murderer, taking all the blame upon herself. Momi hurriedly denies it, claiming she is Jin Momi, but Kyung-ja won't listen. She has already decided to kill them both. As she is about to shoot, the shotgun jams. Seizing the moment, they lunge at Kyung-ja. A gunshot rings out, and all three collapse. The bullet misses Momi, but strikes Chunai. Horrified, Momi watches as Kyung-ja struggles toward the shotgun not far away. She pounces on Kyung-ja, wrestling with her amidst the chaos. Kyung-ja manages to pick up the shotgun again, aiming it at Momi. With a desperate struggle, Momi pushes the barrel away as Kyung-ja tries to strangle her. In this perilous moment, Chun-ai, despite her severe injuries, summons all her strength to save Momi. With her last breath, she rescues her dearest friend from Kyung-ja's clutches, then slowly closes her eyes in Momi's arms. Momi cries out Chunai's name with all her might, but can only watch helplessly as her friend passes away. After the incident, Momi sinks Kyung-ja's body and the car into the lake, narrowly escaping, but losing her only support in her life. Time fast forwards to 2011, when Momi turns herself in, leading to the resolution of a series of violent crimes. On her way to the police station, the media and bystanders swarm to glimpse the true face of the mask girl, a scene once only a fantasy for Momi, but now a reality, though at a grave cost. The story doesn't end there. Given the severity and negative impact of the serial killings, Momi is sentenced to life imprisonment, temporarily calming the storm surrounding the case. A year later, Momi gives birth to a daughter. Claiming she's fleeing overseas, she entrusts her child and Chunai's pet dog to her mother, then vanishes from her daughter's life. She names her daughter Mimo, embedding her hopes for her daughter's beauty. But raised by her stern grandmother, Mimo's childhood is meant to be unhappy. Plain-looking due to her parents' genes, her grandmother, though taking her in, never compliments her, instead often turns cold when reminded of Momi. Estranged from her grandmother, Mimo finds a friend in the neighborhood. A lady sells tteokbokki. Upon entering elementary school, Mimo finally makes friends her age. However, one day the news that her mother is the infamous mask girl spreads among the parents. Learning about her mother's notorious past as a serial killer online, Mimo starts dreaming about the mask girl. Out of a longing for maternal affection and curiosity, she begins imitating her mother's style to understand her better. Seeing this, her grandmother reacts furiously, even threatening to throw her out. Helplessly crying at the door, Mimo is eventually taken back inside by her grandmother after sitting out until nightfall. That night, a heavy rain leads to Mimo falling ill with a fever, and her grandmother stays by her bedside all night. Despite her harsh exterior, her grandmother's feelings towards Mimo's mother are complex. Soon, rumors of the mask girl spread throughout the school and community, casting a shadow over Mimo's life. Discovering her best friend is the rumor's source, Mimo retaliates violently, prompting complaints from other parents. With no other choice, her grandmother decides to leave their hometown. Crying, Mimo bids farewell to the tteokbokki lady, hoping a new place might mean escaping the rumors. However, No matter where she moves, the whispers follow, shaping her into an increasingly violent and troubled student. By 2023, Mimo has reached middle school, and her adolescence only intensifies her rebellious streak. She despises the shadow her mother has cast over her life and grows increasingly distant from her strict grandmother's discipline. Past experiences have taught her to trust others sparingly, making her new school life challenging. However, her desk mate Ye-chun is an exception. They both face ridicule from classmates for their appearances. Ye-chun, cheerful and eager for friendship, is often ostracized. In this context, she takes notice of Mimo. Yet, Mimo claims she doesn't need friends. Despite Ye-chun's efforts to get closer, she is met with indifference. Mimo's heart remains with Teokbokki lady, the one who has cared for her since childhood. Things take a turn when Ye-chun is bullied by some delinquents at school. Mimo intervenes, shattering a picture frame and scaring the bullies away. Although their classmates think Mimo is crazy, Ye-chun grows curious and thinks she is cool. From that point on, Ye-chun clings to Mimo, determined to befriend her despite Mimo's lukewarm response. Yet, their personalities and backgrounds are vastly different. Ye-chun shares her frustrations with her parents, which Mimo dismisses as trivial whining, given she has no parents herself. Ye-chun then reveals she has an alcoholic, abusive father, claiming her life is not as happy as it seems. During a rainstorm, Ye-chun shares her supposed misfortunes with Mimo, who empathizes and opens up about her own background. Ye-chun is shocked by Mimo's story, but becomes even more determined to be her friend. However, Ye-chun's sad tales are fabricated. Her family is actually happy and loving. She invents these stories because she desperately wants to befriend Mimo, seeing it as the only way to resonate with her. Soon after, Mimo and Ye-chun become inseparable friends, sharing music, ignoring the taunts of their classmates, and even standing together in punishment for whispering during class. With such a friend, Mimo smiles again. Trusting Ye-chun deeply, she reveals to her the secret that her mother is the mask girl. Ye-chun is stunned by this confession. Mimo thinks she has scared her, unaware that Ye-chun feels embarrassed about the false life story she has fabricated, leading her to invent another story about her father. Seeing Ye-chun's predicament, Mimo suggests they run away from home together. However, they need a substantial amount of money, which poses a problem. To raise funds, Ye-chun secretly sells her sister's walker, but they only manage to save a small amount. Mimo thinks about asking the Teokbokki lady for help, but Ye-chun persuades her to try to handle it themselves first. Unexpectedly, Ye-chun's idea involves scamming elementary school students out of their pocket money with autographed cards. They are spotted by a classmate and ridiculed. At that moment, her former best friend also mocks her, and the two nearly come to blows. In a moment of desperation, Ye-chun even uses Mimo's backstory to intimidate her. Meanwhile, Mimo's behavior becomes increasingly reckless as she even considers stealing a laptop from a cafe to raise money. Caught for theft, she is taken to the police station, and her grandmother is so furious that she hits her, which only solidifies Mimo's determination to run away. That night, with nowhere to go, Mimo contacts Ye-chun asking to stay at her house for the night. But Ye-chun, having lied about her living situation, is too afraid to let her come. So, she fabricates another lie to persuade Mimo to go home. Not wanting to face her grandmother, Mimo climbs over the wall back to school and sleeps in the classroom for the night. The next day, she overhears two students whispering about the mask girl. Unable to bear her exposed past being discussed at school, Mimo feels she can no longer stay there. As Mimo hasn't come home, her grandmother has to go to the school. The teacher, knowing Ye-chun is close to Mimo, asks her for information, but even Ye-chun can't reach her. After school, Ye-chun searches all their secret hideouts but finds no trace of Mimo. Heading home, she encounters her parents returning from shopping, ready to have dinner together, a scene Mimo witnesses just as she arrives. It's then that Mimo realizes Ye-chun has lied to her. Shortly after, Ye-chun receives a call from Mimo, who wants to meet. Rushing to see her, Ye-chun is relieved to find Mimo unharmed. However, a series of events has led Mimo to mistakenly believe that Ye-chun has leaked the secret about the mask girl. Despite Ye-chun's vehement denials, an emotional Mimo attacks her. Meanwhile, at the other end of the tunnel, an elderly woman watches everything unfold with satisfaction. This woman is Kyung-ja, miraculously revived and disguised, watching the drama she has indirectly caused. The story then shifts back to the perspective of the mask girl, Momi, Mimo's mother, who thought her surrender and imprisonment would end everything but didn't anticipate it would lead her daughter into peril. During her years in prison, Momi faces many challenges. Initially, her arrest makes national news, making her infamous among the inmates. She expects trouble but finds that the prisoners are more interested in her cosmetic surgery experiences than her crimes. Momi quickly adapts to prison life, surrounded daily by curious inmates to whom she generously shares her beauty tips. Among the inmates is a prison queen, Yoon-suk, a powerful figure with connections in both politics and business, who even the warden respects. Momi is curious about what has led such an impressive figure to prison and learns that she is serving a heavy sentence for brutally killing her cheating husband and his mistress. Her cellmates warn her not to provoke this woman, but Momi is undeterred. One day, a new inmate arrives. When the cafeteria worker refuses to feed her, Momi's cellmate explains that the woman is imprisoned for adultery, and Yoon-suk has a rule that new inmates convicted of adultery are to be starved for 3 days. Momi finds the rule absurd and shares her own meal with the new inmate, immediately drawing the ire of Yoon-suk. Her cellmates, knowing trouble is brewing, quickly distance themselves. It isn't long before the predicted trouble arrives. Momi is doing laundry when Yoon-suk's henchwomen clear out the laundry room, planning to teach her a lesson. Momi is no pushover, and soon a brawl breaks out. Wounded and bloodied, Momi is thrown into solitary confinement. Momi can't understand why she is placed in solitary confinement while those she fought go unpunished. The guard simply tells her, "You hit her follower, that's why." After 2 weeks, she is finally released. Her cellmates advise her to keep a low profile in prison to avoid continuous bullying, but Momi doesn't take their warnings seriously. The very next day, she confronts one of Yoon-suk's subordinates, resulting in another fight. Everyone thinks she has lost her mind, and once again, Momi is placed in solitary confinement. From then on, Momi becomes increasingly volatile. Each time she is released from solitary, she seeks out that subordinate and beats her, unstoppable until it leaves deep psychological scars on her. The warden is troubled by Momi's behavior, and Yoon-suk suggests keeping her in solitary indefinitely. However, there are strict regulations on the amount of time a prisoner can be kept in solitary, and Momi has already exhausted her allotted time. Continuing to do so would bring trouble for both the warden and Yoon-suk if discovered. Soon after, Momi is released again, and upon seeing her, the subordinate flees in terror, only to be caught and beaten again by Momi. This time, Yoon-suk negotiates with her, reaching an agreement to leave each other alone. Satisfied, Momi withdraws her hostilities, and her prison life finally returns to calm. By 2013, Momi has cut her long hair and bears the marks of time on her face. A new warden arrives, and because Momi is the infamous mask girl, she takes a special interest in her. The new warden appears to be a devout religious follower, always talking about God and doctrine, but in reality, she's as eager to please Yoon-suk as her predecessor. The newcomer is a fan of Momi. Despite the years that have passed since the mask girl's case, many young inmates are still curious about Momi. Momi thinks her life will continue like this, but one day, she receives an anonymous letter containing a news report about the descendants of the mask girl. The headline stuns her on the spot. Momi's cellmate, who has lived with her for years, is surprised because she has never known Momi has a child outside. After much contemplation, Momi decides to escape from prison. Her cellmate thinks she is crazy, as escaping seems nearly impossible. But Momi is serious and quickly devises an escape plan. She accumulates strips of cloth from the prison's textile work, secretly smuggles them out, and hides them in a place unlikely to be discovered. With her cellmate's help, Momi successfully escapes through the prison's garden. She ties a rope from the prepared cloth strips to scale the wall, but the plan is too hasty, and she is quickly caught by the guards. Furious upon learning this, the warden decides to confine Momi to solitary for a month, despite the regulations allowing a maximum of 2 weeks. The warden chooses to ignore these rules, determined to make Momi understand the severe consequences of attempting an escape. Momi, locked in solitary confinement, is given a Bible by a guard. The warden thinks Momi's escape attempt is due to demonic temptation and demands deep introspection from her. However, this action instead sparks a new idea in Momi. When the warden thinks of Momi sometime later, she has already spent a month alone in solitary. The guards find her odd and report it to the warden. When the warden comes to see her, she finds Momi devoutly kneeling and praying motionlessly. Moved by her apparent devotion, she quickly releases her. Back among her cellmates, Momi, like a changed person, carefully places the Bible on her washstand and tells her cellmate that she is now a child of God. Her cellmate does not understand the transformation, but soon after, Momi becomes a model prisoner. The warden uses Momi's change as a positive example throughout the prison, although her cellmate doesn't believe Momi has truly found religion, suspecting she has other plans. Momi soon finds a great opportunity. Yoon-suk's daughter is seriously ill and needs a kidney transplant, but can't find a suitable donor. Yoon-suk is distraught, crying daily. Momi volunteers to donate her kidney, surprising Yoon-suk. After a series of tests, it turns out Momi's kidney is a match for Yoon-suk's daughter. Yoon-suk, crying while laughing, hugs Momi, grateful for her gesture. Momi thus becomes Yoon-suk's benefactor, but Momi doesn't anticipate that danger will come so quickly. One day, during a volunteer event at the prison, an elderly woman stops Momi. Confused, Momi looks at this stranger, not knowing who she is. To her shock, the woman reveals herself as Ju Oh-nam's mother. Momi is stunned, unable to remember who that was. It turns out that Kyung-ja hadn't died that night. She regained consciousness in the water, found herself trapped in the car, and escaped by using a shotgun in the back seat to break the glass. Kyung-ja believes this second chance is divine intervention, allowing her to continue her revenge. However, due to media coverage, she finds it difficult to act freely. To evade the police, she undergoes plastic surgery, adopting a new face and identity. She buys a house in the suburbs with a basement and starts looking for Momi. Discovering that Momi is in prison, she feels her hopes for revenge are dashed. She tries to forget everything but can't let go. She then turns her attention to Momi's daughter, starting a new plan for revenge. Kyung-ja, under her new guise as a friendly Taeokbokki lady, gains Mimo's trust and hovers around her. She spreads rumors about the masked girl in the neighborhood, isolating Mimo. When Mimo, crying, confides in her, Kyung-ja encourages her to take drastic actions in retaliation. Under her influence, Mimo becomes increasingly violent and is eventually expelled from school. Kyung-ja keeps in touch with Mimo, watching her from a distance while telling the gossip media about her new address. In fact, Ye-chun hadn't revealed Mimo's secret that day. It was Kyung-ja who later found Mimo's classmates and spread the news. Under her manipulation, Mimo is forced to run away from home, abandoning her only friend, destitute and alone. Kyung-ja does this to make her taste the pain of losing loved ones. Momi, overwhelmed by emotion, tries to confront Kyung-ja, but Kyung-ja deliberately falls, drawing the guards' attention. As Momi screams helplessly, Kyung-ja leaves the prison triumphantly. When Kyung-ja returns from the prison, Mimo is waiting outside her house. Mimo, unsuspecting and completely unaware of the danger she is in, trusts her completely. To save her daughter, Momi confides her ordeal to Eun-suk, who agrees to help investigate. Although it might be difficult to locate the Taeokbokki lady, they could start by finding Momi's mother's contact information. Meanwhile, Kyung-ja shows concern for Mimo, knowing she won't go home, and suggests she call her family to reassure them, but not reveal her location. Mimo notices a picture of a man in the living room, and Kyung-ja, with a heavy heart, shares her experience of losing her son, which deeply saddens Mimo. Yoon-suk quickly locates Momi's mother's phone number and informs Momi. At that moment, Momi's mother is at the police station reporting her granddaughter's disappearance. Momi calls her mother from prison, but unfortunately, her daughter Mimo has already contacted her grandmother, telling her she is safe and asking her not to look for her anymore. Mimo feels that her grandmother will always be reminded of her mother when seeing her and believes herself to be an annoyance, so she thinks disappearing is the best solution. The grandmother wants to explain, but Mimo hangs up the phone. While the grandmother is distressed, Momi finally manages to contact her. Momi wants to warn her mother about the suspicious old lady around her daughter, but the grandmother is so upset by her voice that she doesn't want to talk further. After the call drops, Momi tries to call again, but her phone time is up, and she nearly causes trouble by loudly demanding more time from the guards. Momi almost ends up in solitary again, but Yoon-suk intercedes with the warden on her behalf. Since Kyung-ja has changed her identity, Yoon-suk can't find her, but she manages to get Mimo's school's phone number and gives it to Momi. With her help, Momi gets another chance to use the phone. A school teacher agrees to help get a student to answer the phone. After Momi leaves the phone booth, a girl's voice comes through, but Momi hangs up without saying anything. In reality, that is not Mimo, but an actress hired by Yoon-suk. Momi senses something is off, so she asks Yoon-suk to get a photo of her daughter at school. With the day of her surgery approaching, Yoon-suk agrees and quickly arranges for someone to pick a random student's photo, knowing that Momi had entered prison just after giving birth and had no idea what her daughter looked like. To keep Momi calm for the surgery, Yoon-suk hands her a random student's photo, and Momi thanks her. Seeing no suspicion from Momi, Yoon-suk thinks everything goes well. Meanwhile, Kyung-ja is plotting her plan. She buys rope and charcoal at a supermarket, preparing to carry out her plan. When she returns home and finds Mimo missing, she thinks the girl has discovered a flaw and run away. But Mimo emerges from behind a curtain, holding a cake and singing a birthday song. It turns out that Mimo had accidentally seen Kyung-ja's fake ID and thought it was her birthday. To celebrate this special moment, they blow out the candles together, but the child says, "In my heart, I already think of you as my real grandma." In stark contrast to Mimo's sincerity, Kyung-ja's plan appears even more despicable. On the eve of the surgery, Momi carefully examines the forged photograph. Although she has never seen her daughter, maternal instinct tells her that the person in the photo is not her child. The next day, Momi solemnly says goodbye to her roommate and dresses in the casual clothes prepared by Yoon-suk, ready to head to the hospital. The surgery is conducted secretly, and the warden specifically reminds Momi to follow the plan, to which she complies obediently throughout. Not wanting any further delays, Kyung-ja decides to kill Momi that very day. She drugs Momi's breakfast, preparing a lavish meal for her. During the meal, Momi expresses her desire to earn money. When asked why, she happily mentions wanting to buy clothes and treats for her grandmother to properly show her filial respect. This momentarily makes Kyung-ja feel guilty, but her judgment is clouded by hatred. Mimo's grandmother, worried about her granddaughter, inquires about the tteokbokki lady. After much effort, she manages to get the lady's phone number, but no one answers the calls. Just as she is about to go out searching, Ye-chun appears, having also noticed something suspicious about the tteokbokki lady. It turns out that after Ye-chun and Momi have a falling out, she begins investigating the source of the rumors, eventually tracing all clues back to the tteokbokki lady. Momi has already been taken to the ward before the surgery, where she requests a Bible from the guards, as it is a major surgery, and having a Bible would make her feel more at ease. Since she has maintained her disguise well, the guards don't suspect anything. After the guard leaves, Momi asks the remaining guard to let her go to the bathroom, but as per the rules, she has to be closely monitored. When the guard refuses, Momi stands up, declaring that she will not undergo the surgery and lets the guards explain it to Yoon-suk and the warden. With no other choice, the guard unlocks Momi's handcuffs, but Momi suddenly lifts the toilet lid and knocks the guard unconscious. Momi then prepares to escape from the hospital, but Yoon-suk's hatchet men quickly arrive, forcing her to jump from the window. Despite the risk of injury, she is determined to save her daughter and is hit by a sedan upon landing. The driver gets out to check, but Momi quickly gets into the car and drives away. On the road, Momi uses the car owner's phone to call her mother, warning her of the danger to Momi. Finally convinced, her mother learns she is also en route to Kyung-ja's home. Momi urges her mother not to go, warning her that Kyung-ja is dangerous. Despite this, her mother decides to go anyway as it's such a dangerous situation. She drops Ye-chun off halfway and calls the police. Concerned for her friend's safety, Ye-chun gets out and then hails a taxi. At that moment, Kyung-ja has set up a camera, planning to record Momi's demise and exact revenge on the masked girl. When Mimo awakes and finds herself bound, she does not understand why the lady would do this to her. Kyung-ja, seeing her confusion, tells her about her mother's brutal murder of her son. Kyung-ja had hesitated, but seeing Momi in prison boast about her redemption inflamed her anger. She had felt like she was living in hell for those years. How dare Jin Momi claim to have been redeemed, so despite knowing the child is innocent, she cannot stop. The car Momi has hijacked runs out of fuel halfway, and she can only seek help from passers-by. She lies to a woman that she is a victim of domestic abuse. Seeing her bruised face, the woman, moved by sympathy, agrees to give her a ride. Momi is still struggling. Seeing that she seems to have something to say, Kyung-ja decides to let her leave a last message. Hearing the child say she is cold, she unhesitatingly takes off her coat and drapes it over the girl, but she dares not look directly into the girl's eyes. Momi begs Kyung-ja to let her go, but Kyung-ja won't allow her to speak. At that moment, the doorbell rings. Meanwhile, Momi is hurrying to Kyung-ja's house. As she is approaching, a broadcast suddenly issues a warrant for Momi. Realizing she is the wanted person, she immediately asks to get out of the car and decides to take a back road to Kyung-ja's house. After getting out, the driver reports Kyung-ja to the police. Due to the grandmother's call to the police, they come to investigate. Kyung-ja acts as if nothing is wrong and allows the officers to inspect the house. After checking around and finding nothing unusual, the officers think it might be a prank call. However, just as the officers are leaving, Momi manages to free herself from the duct tape and starts shouting for help. It seems the officers hear the cries and decide to re-enter the house. But then, they receive a message about a nearby fugitive and decide to leave first. After the officers leave, Kyungja returns to the basement and lights the charcoal, wanting to resolve the situation quickly. At this time, Momi's grandmother finds the cabin. Soon, Momi also arrives. After lighting the charcoal, Kyungja cruelly leaves the basement. When she comes out, she encounters Momi's grandmother. While they are struggling, Yechun rushes in. The grandmother grabs Kyungja, tells Yechun to rescue Momi. The toxic smoke rising in the basement makes Yechun feel uncomfortable. She finds Momi, immediately turns off the electric stove and wakes her up. She begins to incoherently apologize to her friend, saying she shouldn't have lied to her. It isn't until Momi reminds her that she remembers to untie her. Momi's grandmother tightly holds onto Kyungja's leg, and in response, Kyungja stabs her with a knife. Just as Kyungja is preparing to continue her attack, Momi arrives in time and knocks Kyungja unconscious with an object. Years later, Momi sees her mother again. Despite her injuries, her mother urges her to save the child. Afterwards, Momi finally finds her daughter in the basement. Mother and daughter recognize each other immediately but don't know what to say. Momi silently unties her daughter and is about to take her to escape when Kyungja appears again at the basement entrance, holding a blood-stained knife. Kyungja is blinded by fury, and upon spotting a shotgun nearby, Momi immediately lunges at her. During their struggle, the shotgun accidentally goes off, allowing Momi to pin Kyungja down and give the children a chance to escape. As Mimo gets out of the basement, she sees her grandmother lying in blood. Crying, Mimo apologizes to her grandmother, who, seeing her safe, breathes a sigh of relief. She slowly takes Mimo's hand, whispers an apology, and then closes her eyes. While Mimo is devastated, the intense fight continues in the basement. Momi furiously attacks Kyungja, determined to end it all, while Kyungja fights back just as fiercely. Both are exhausted from inhaling toxic fumes, but their strong wills keep either from falling first. With a loud noise, Momi finally comes out alive. As the three of them leave the cabin, the outside is swarmed with police cars. With police shouting commands, Momi raises her hands without hesitation. Just when she thinks it is all over, a blood-covered Kyungja crawls out. The police see her wielding a gun and immediately issue a warning. But Kyungja, ignoring them, aims the gun at Momi. In the next second, she shoots at Mimo, and the police fatally shoot Kyungja. Kyungja completes her revenge, but Momi is critically wounded while protecting her daughter, and ultimately dies in her daughter's arms. Mimo barely has time to recognize her mother before losing her only relative in such a heartbreaking way. That day's events change Mimo's life completely. After the case, Yechun's parents adopt her, and she returns to school. The present Mimo, free from hatred, starts her life anew. While sorting through her family's belongings, she finds items from her mother's childhood, including a videotape recording her mother's childhood dreams. Looking at the hopeful, smiling face in the video, Mimo bursts into tears.